Okay, here we are. Anna, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you. And how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm talking to you. So,
Yes. Right before we jumped on here, just so people know, we were already having like a 10-minute conversation, already flowing back and forth with great ideas. So we had to hit record and get into this. So I don't do any crazy formal introductions because I love it when people can just tell it from their view and kind of tell us who they are. So why don't you tell everyone who you are and how you got to do what you're doing now?
sure. Hi, my name's Anna. I'm a personal trainer and nutrition coach. I've been doing this for about 4 years, 3 years online. And I just recently went back to be an in-person trainer part-time because I missed it and I needed other people's space other than my family's. Anyway, really love personal training and helping people with their nutrition. How I got into it is complicated. I always struggled with my weight since the fifth grade, really. And I had three very large babies, all close to or over 10 pounds. And I could never figure out. I just was that person that really wanted to lose weight and figure it out. And I always tell my people I did all the stupid stuff so you don't have to. And so, like, what was it? 2015. I was like, I'm going to hire a coach and I'm going to figure it out. And I started seeing results in 2015. And then the next month, I found out I was pregnant with our third baby. But that was the snowball that turned into an avalanche that changed my life because I had my previous pregnancy was super awful. Like I gained 60 pounds. I had a hip disorder. It was awful. And the third one, I always said if I had a surprise third kid, I would get my act together. And I did. And so I'm always very big about pregnant ladies. Please, please, please strength train. Because my third baby, I strength trained until 38 weeks, easiest birth, easiest labor, easiest recovery. And I only gained like 18 pounds and he was a 10-pound baby. So didn't really affect me like the previous pregnancy. And then in 2016, I was like, okay, let's do this. And I dropped all the weight and I've kept it off for 10 years. And so I changed my life and I really want to help people do that. I want them to feel empowered, especially like women, because we love to give our power away. And I'm like, no, no, no. You have control over your life. Stop giving it to everybody and everything, especially food and especially exercise. Like it's a thing to make you feel stronger, not a thing to make you feel like you're not good enough. So that's a little bit about me.
That's beautiful. You gave a great summary very quick, and I love how much you told there because there's a lot to dig into.
Yeah.
I want to highlight the struggle with weight and kind of going through the trials and tribulations. I always feel like it makes you a more relatable coach and someone that you can. It's not that like people who don't struggle with weight don't have good information, but they won't have the same information and respect for empathy that you have the capacity for because like, hey, I've been there, I've done that, I made that mistake. I'm not going to guilt you for it. And it's like, hey, this is an easier path. So I think that's super important. When you said stupid stuff, I actually like it when people can just be open about some of the stupid stuff that you can remember so people don't do it. So what were some of the stupid things that you think you should help people with recognizing?
So like any type of diet that has a popular name is probably not a good diet. That's just like my number one. Like I do flexible dieting. That's what it does have a name, but it's really just like you kind of just do it. It's not a paleo or Whole30 or anything like that. I did paleo, and for the life of me, I tried to make paleo chocolate chip cookies. It'll taste just as good, I promise, you know? So anytime you have to try to manipulate your brain into making a dessert taste good when it doesn't taste good, you're doing it wrong. So, you know what I mean? And I love sweets. I am a nutrition coach that is a huge foodie. And I always tell my people, I am never going to tell you not to have dessert. Like life is too short and like food is more than fuel. And so it's like, I bake all the time. The Great British Bake Off's my favorite show. And so like, I did no sugar. I would go on bouts of like 30 days of no sugar. And I just call those the sad Anna times. So, so like we don't do that here, right? Like we live it with, I always tell my clients, we live within reason. We behave appropriately in the setting that we're in. And so at Christmas time, Thanksgiving, you have Canadian Thanksgiving, but like I assume it's the same where
Yeah,
you
a lot of
overeat.
food. Overeat,
Yes.
Christmas especially, that's the baked good season.
Yeah, and it's like you're gonna let go. You're gonna get off track a little bit, but that's appropriate. The goal is to make that getting off track shorter and shorter distance. I always say we're on a highway and we're gonna take the off ramp occasionally. We just don't want to go down 40 miles down the road. We want to get at the off ramp, get some gas, and then get back on, right? Like we just want to learn how to get off track and get back on faster, right? Because life, the holidays, I always say the holidays are always going to show up, right? Like you're not ever going to skip out. You shouldn't, because life's too short, right?
Yeah.
And so like I learning how to have a good relationship with food, and I didn't have a good relationship with food. That was another thing of like thinking oh my goodness, for years I thought my love of food was bad. I shouldn't love food as much as I do. And it's like, no, food is art, it's connection, it's culture. Like, why would you not love something that brings so much joy to people? That's weird, you know? So, yeah.
It's well stated. I heard this recently, just around the same adage. It was So Fit, where she said, emotional eating isn't inherently bad. We just think it's bad. It can be used inappropriately. It can be used as a form of dependency, and you're not solving the problems. Another great adage was, if food's not the problem, how can it be the solution, right? Mm. Whereas what So Fit is talking about is just like, hey, when you're getting together with friends for your birthday and you have cake, it's an emotional thing. That's okay. You're having a nice dinner out with your partner because it's Valentine's Day. That's emotional eating. That's not the problem. Mm-hmm. But the emotional eating can go to the far end. As you mentioned, it's okay we don't expect to be perfect. Mm-hmm. I always say it's not about having a big pendulum yo-yo. It's just it's okay to have ebbs and flows, but not a yo-yo. Yeah. And that's the hardest thing, to not go from extremes, but have the more realistic in between. It's a very difficult thing for people who are so gravitated towards food. So I love that, especially how you've framed it, is just, the diet with a name, right? Now, mm-hmm. Flexible dieting even is more of a philosophical standpoint, right? It's just an approach that you can take, and it's flexible. That means like sometimes you might feel like being more low carb just because you feel like being more low carb. Sometimes you want to be higher carb because that's the food that's around. You're not saying it's one way or the other. And I think I'm very much in the same school of thought. And especially the funny thing you framed it is like the paleo cookies, or you see it now, carnivores trying to get bigger. The carnivore cookies is like, oh, you're trying so hard to be the other food anyways. Now, I'm also not going to be a hypocrite, because it's hypocritical to say that I don't do something similar in protein baked goods. So okay. I'll make high protein cookies, I'll make protein, muffins and stuff like that. But I'm not trying to say that these are as good. These are simply tools for accountability. People will see on my social media every Saturday and Sunday morning, me and my girl having the real thing. Like when I did 60 days of eating a cookie every day last year. I'm doing 100 days here in the spring with real cookies. Like I'm not fucking around with this challenge. I would go get like the biggest, juiciest cookies that I could find, and I would just show how you can make it fit your macros.
What I actually found.
Oh, I had, me and my girl have Imperial cookies. And so we make homemade Imperial cookies. Like, you guys, is that like maybe a Canadian thing? I don't know.
I've never heard of it.
So what's really interesting is if you hear it apart, it doesn't sound as good as it is when you get it all together. But basically, it's like a shortbread cookie that's like a jam cookie, because you put raspberry jam between two of the shortbread cookies, and then you have icing on top. But the icing on top is like with almond extract, so that's what makes it like sweetened. Almond extract jam cookie essentially is what it is. Oh. And when we make ours specifically with extra butter and extra icing sugar in the actual shortbread, so they're like sweet cookies. And I mean, we would have one each, and one of those cookies at least 500 to 600 calories. Like they're solid, delicious. They're a meal, and so those are my probably number one. Especially because when you talk about emotional eating, like that is an emotional eating, because it's an important thing for me and my girl every Saturday and Sunday, and I'm not over consuming because that's the only thing I have with coffee, and it's such a ritual for us, and it's like our thing. We have an event planned in the morning. We have a cookie and a coffee, and we're going to go to that event with our cookie and coffee. We actually. don't have a lot of emotional eating throughout the week with just personal eating, which is more the problem, because we get to look forward to these events. And
Yes.
I actually I've reprogrammed my brain, and it was actually Jordan who pointed out binge eating tends to happen alone. And I never recognized that, even though I was doing it all the time alone.
Yeah.
Once I recognized it, I realized that was a problem, and it helped that I moved in with my girl. But the thing that really like completely got constructed from being with my girl around having these treats was, before I used to look forward to eating alone with these foods, but I would overconsume them. Mm-hmm. And now it's like I don't even want to have a really good treat food unless I share it with her, because it heightens the whole experience. And it's clearly emotional eating, but it's a healthy way to emotionally eat. It's a way to enjoy the experience more.
Yes, I can relate to that completely. Like when I was losing all my weight in 2016, every Sunday we would go get donuts. Shipley's Donuts in Texas, if you know, you know. Like and I would look forward to it all week. But what happened, it was ritualistic, right? Like food is more than just fuel. And then what it would help during the rest of the week, going like, I don't need to have a sweet. And so it helped me take my power back and control back, because I knew I was going to get those donuts on Sunday. And so like with you and your girlfriends, like the idea of like, I know I'm going to get those cookies. I can say no now because I know it's coming. You know what I mean? And it's like growing in self-control that way too. It's just multi-layered. Those cookies sound awesome too. I want one now.
They're amazing. I can send you the recipe after.
Yes.
They're really easy to make. So I highly recommend it. They're delicious.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you mentioned, the ritualistic, and that's why I recommend when people are trying to find that flexible dieting approach, you have to have your own cadence, and it's got to be flexible in itself, but you could try to rely on a bit of a practice.
Yeah.
And so what I recommend people figure out is like, maybe for some people, only one treat a week is actually what they need at a certain point in time. But maybe some people, when they try to wait all week for that one big meal, then they overdo it and they just crash on the weekend.
Yes.
So then some people, it's like, okay, well, maybe you think about have a couple medium and maybe a Wednesday night treat, because it gets you to feel like, hey, I got to have a little bit more. This is a ritual a little bit less lengthy, right? And it's just like, it's so relative. But it's important to understand that the flexibility is within the individual, and there still needs to be that accountability right before and after, right?
Right.
And, one of Jordan Zayed's phrasing was like, if you pop a tire, you don't slash all four tires.
Yeah.
And I would rather a different analogy than that, and it's like, if you pop a tire, turn the wheel and stop driving down that road, because there might be more nails. And so I don't like the idea of like consciously slashing tires, because that's not what people are doing, but people are going with a momentum in a direction that is dangerous for them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit more, it's a bit more directive, right? It's like people aren't consciously trying to slash their tires, but they are in a form of momentum that they have a hard time controlling. And that's what they need to see. It's like, hey, you can just slow down this car right now, take hold. You popped your tire. That's okay. But don't keep driving this way. And
that's
so,
a good, yeah.
Yeah. And
I
so
like
then
that a lot.
Because it's a little bit more directive. Like you want to be able to take the next action step. One of the best phrasings whenever people have emotional eating issues, or going off, crash dieting, whatever it is just the term pause and just stop and take a breath. Like just these little moments of pattern interruption. Like you don't have to go this direction just because you're feeling it. As a matter of fact, when you're feeling it and you're feeling really driven to do the things you don't want to do, this is the most important time to be present, because you might be ignoring emotions that are present right now because you go into autopilot when you're just feeling that kind of binge feeling. So I feel you have a lot to say about this.
Same way, it sounds like. Because I always say practice the pause. That's what I tell my clients. I say practice the pause, because I think the majority of people that really struggle, like I think this is universal, because we talked before the thing of like therapy and stuff like that. Most people are on autopilot. Mm-hmm. Most people are not being aware of like being present in their body when they're making choices, right? Like, and talking, I'm always getting my clients, I'm like, please talk to yourself. I was just talking with my check-ins this week of like, the thoughts you think are not you. You're the one listening to the thoughts, and you can talk back to it, right? Like you don't need these things. So practice the pause. Like when you're standing in front of the pantry, practice the pause before you make that choice. Are you really hungry? Is this emotional eating? Check with yourself. Can I wait 15 minutes? And if I'm still hungry, maybe then I can eat. Right. And I always say practice the pivot. I really like what you said about don't go down that road, because I'm like, flexible dieting is really about control, right? That's why I like it so much, is that you get to choose what it looks like and what works for your lifestyle, right? What is sustainable? Because you can take what I said, you can take what you said, and then make it your own, right? And so I really like the whole going down the road. You've popped a tire, pause, and don't go down. Maybe turn around now. This isn't working for me. Let me recalibrate and see what else I can do. You know what I mean? That's why I like flexible dining so much, because it's more about, how does this work for me? We have some you need your protein, you need your fiber, you need your calories, but then we can make that look however it looks for you. Right? And I think that with diets with names, it's we're square and you have to be square. Flexible dieting is we really just need 3 points, and you can be whatever 3 points you want to be. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Protein, calories, fiber. If you hit those three pillars, I always say my four are protein, micronutrients, which is usually your source of fiber and other vitamins, minerals, hitting your fruits. Recognize your total calories, and then the top is actually just enjoyment. So it's the relative piece to the individual. So it's that top piece has to be there, otherwise it's not a complete meal plan. And it's not a food group, it's a perception of how you actually want to plan things. I use the classic chicken, rice, and broccoli. Yeah, it fits part of the pyramid because it has the protein, lean protein, it has micronutrients, and it has energy from rice, but it's but I fucking hate that. So then let's not do that. That's not going to be your plan.
Dying.
Yeah, and so you got to have relativity in everything. It's the perception, and the way that you communicated the idea of you are not your thoughts is so vital. And I think more people need to recognize that we're even more of the things we can't hear than the things that we hear in our head. And I really recommend, I'll send you the podcast I did with this girl, Adele Spragon, and she really focuses on subconscious level of thinking within individuals.
I love that stuff.
Well, and her free book, by the way, download, completely changed the way I think about this, because she really framed it up in that you don't feel, act, or feel, think, and act. Because when you believe we get an emotion, we think about that emotion rationally and act. But what actually happens within the body, because it's so reactive, we are very reactive beings, and we are emotional, is that we feel, we just start acting, and then we rationalize that action. So the subconscious level of thinking, it's you got home when you were stressed one day, and then you're already going to the pantry to get the Oreos. And then in your mind, you're I did this good, and, I had this stress. So now you're in rationalization mode. And so it's not that you felt and then thought and then acted. You were already going to the fucking pantry. You were already making that decision. Now we rationalize it to make it okay. Now, the pause is the opportunity for us to knock on that emotional door. And what I really learned from her was, when you start getting a feeling, not the thought, the feeling, it's physical, it's not mental, pause on it and ask it what it's doing, because it's super uncomfortable. And when you start to say that I am not my thoughts, that gives you another opportunity of change. So I love how you frame that, because we will have thoughts that come in. We'll have these rationalizing thoughts. We'll have these things of emotional waves that, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it's just okay, but pause. That doesn't have to be the future you. You had said it before we even got on here. The old you has to die somehow, right? The old you, it can be a separate person. And I'm really big on identity and phrasing. It's been so big, because whenever you listen to people talk about I am this person, or I did this thing, or I can't do this thing, or it's impossible, these red flag statements, is the subconscious level of thinking coming out and just telling you, this is what my bias is going to be. And I had a discussion with a client just today where she was saying, I am broken. And I was just so you know, when you're dealing with a lot of pain, when you describe yourself that way, you're going to look for the bias of pain. Now, if you frame it up in a way that is constructive or directive, then you're not going to look for the bias, you're going to look for opportunity. So if you say, I have a lot of problems to solve, I am very stiff and I want to get out of my stiffness, if you identify with the process and you're not saying you're broken, you have an opportunity for a different bias. But don't bias like the negative state, because then you're just going to find a way to do it because that's what you're trying to do. That's your identity.
That's what the brain does. The brain does that. The brain looks for confirmation. It's confirmation bias machine. It's not like, I always tell people, it's like your brain, this is why weight loss is so hard. This is why building a healthy lifestyle is so hard, because your brain doesn't care about you growing. It's like, hey girl, we're alive. That's good. Let's stay that way. You're miserable, but who cares? You're alive, right? So you are constantly having to go, but I don't want to do this anymore. And so that's why so many people stop, start, because one, what you said, the emotions, it's like not, this is going to be a hot take. Okay. I do believe most adults are walking around like with the emotional maturity of children, because one, emotional maturity is like a skill where you have to practice it. And most people are not given skills, right? Because they're not aware, and then they don't know what to do when they feel these feelings, right? And then a lot of people were taught that emotions weren't safe. And so like with our clients, it sounds like you do something similar, like practice the pause, feel the feelings, because I promise you, you're not going to die, right? Like we can just move through them, because the longer you resist it by coping with it through food or unhealthy patterns, the longer that feeling stays. I believe I heard something that's like a feeling only, if you don't feed it fuel, can only last 90 seconds. And so like, if you just go like, I'm not going to, so like, think of anxiety. I've been in therapy for 7 years and I'm a nervous Nelly, right? So like if I'm anxious, and sometimes it's out of my control too, because I think there's some genetics at play, like just chemically. But then if I'm like, oh, I'm anxious, I could just say I'm anxious. Well, this is normal in the whatever I'm experiencing. Or I could be like, oh, let's just douse it with lighter fluid, right? Like, and then that feeling ruins my whole day. Right. And a lot of people don't know, oh, this is just a feeling. We can look at it. We can say, yes, it's there. And then we can let it go. But most people will go, no, I've got to cope through diet, like my food and alcohol and all of these like unhealthy habits. And they never resolve the feeling. And so it's like, we've got to work through the feelings. Most of this is emotional. This is so much emotional work. My therapist, one of the best things he has ever said to me is emotional load corrupts logical thinking. Because when you're emotionally overwhelmed, logic, literally your brain that holds the logic, goes off. It's like it has left the room, it's left the building. We have to bring the emotional load down so that logic can re-enter. And so that's what we have to do. And I always tell my clients, food is the number one coping mechanism, right? It's the easiest to access. It's it makes us feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we have to deal with our emotions first. And I think that's all of it. Yeah, it's mindset.
Absolutely agree. It's massively underestimated, because we had mentioned about flexible dieting. The fundamental principles are actually there. We were talking about it off air. It's like a handful of people, you could just give them the plan and they follow it, and they just needed that set of tracks. That's usually around 10 to 20% of your clients that end up getting the best transformations because they just need that plan. Then there's a good 80% of people who have levels of this emotional healing that they need, because you'll lay out the plan and they won't do it. And they'll go on phases of doing it. Some of them won't do it at all. Some of them will always have a new reason and give you a novel for things that are going wrong in their life. Even if you said, can you do a 10-minute workout once a week? There's always these things where it's the internal work. And as you mentioned about the emotional challenge that people have, it only makes sense. Only because we're in the realm of personal development would we actually start to question it. If your job is to be office worker, it could be anything, maybe you're in customer relations, maybe you're, construction worker, anything like that. No one's asking you, hey, have you ever like made sure you know how to control your emotional state? You know, unless you end up in front of an HR rep because you have an emotional burst, like no one's asking you to do this. Because we're so fascinated with personal development, this is thing that's like, hey, I didn't even recognize until I was going down the rabbit hole on a book one day, all emotions have purpose. And it was like an eye-opening moment. It was a really good by Mark Mason. He frames it.
I love him so much.
Yeah, his book is great, and like so, it was actually a second book, which is very philosophical, and he talked about how all emotions are literally there because of evolutionary adaptation. So if you're saying, like, whether it's anger, sadness, happiness, anything, we can't even say anger is like a bad thing, because anger is what probably come over you when you need to defend someone in your family or yourself. Sadness is there to actually remind you of something that you felt, but also to signal to other humans that you care about that human or that thing. All of these things have a purpose. So to say that, you know, emotions are useless, I didn't even conceive until I started to educate myself on it. And so the skill is to use it at the appropriate time, as we mentioned, the appropriate amount of emotional eating, the appropriate amount of having that stuff in your life. And meanwhile, when the emotional roller coaster is coming throughout other stressful times, recognizing it, pausing and learning from it. And it's such a long evolution. Like, I've only started maturing over the last like 5 to 6 years. I would say I would even give myself 3 to 4. I would say I knew how to do the weight loss in the first little few years of my online career, but in the last 2 to 3 is like honestly from recognizing and my girl helping me with flexible dieting unintentionally. It just did happen. Is where it really started to heal. And even then, still improving it, because it's still a gradual thing, especially similar to yourself. I had a hard time with weight when I grew up, and that stuff sticks with you. So I think it's a really difficult thing to evolve people out of. What are some tips, what are other tips other than the pause that you recommend people utilize to help with this?
Well, I just love what you just said, too, because I think that you're just saying you're still growing. Right. And I think that I remember asking something on my Instagram going like, do you want to see people that you respect as coaches and therapists? I'm very, very pro therapy. I've been in it for 7 years. Do you want to see your therapists? Do you want to see your coaches struggle? And that was one of my most popular things because everyone's like, yes. And so I was like, oh, okay. Like, I think we're always growing. I always say that one thing that I say about myself is like, I don't have it all together. I still look at the scale sometimes and get mad, right? Like, it's not like, but I just don't melt into crumble into myself like a dying star if it's showing me a number I don't like, right? And so like, I always just say, I'm just further down the road, right? And just yelling, just follow my voice, right? And so like, I think people need to understand that there is no timeline to growing. That's a huge one. I think that people get in their heads that if I can just do it here, then I can relax. Oh, no, I'm sorry. One of my favorite artists is named Scott Erickson, and he says, with every death, there is a resurrection. And so like with this whole building a new lifestyle, growing, a part of you is going to have to die, like we said off thing, but there is going to be a resurrection. You have to make way. It's kind of like gardening. You have to pull the dead so that new life can come up, you know? And so it's like people have to let go of the life they have for the life that they want. And that, but also like, I'm not a bro, right? Like I'm a lady. I have 3 children. I see the bros sometimes going like, just do it, right? No excuses. Yes, we can take that, but we have to have empathy in that statement of like, but my life is what I know and it's scary to release it. And so, but it's got to die. Sometimes things are just not helpful for us anymore. So we can have empathy of like, yes, it's painful, but you're leaving room to know what's coming next, right? And so like that's a big thing I wish people understood of like, you're going to lose the timeline, you're going to lose a part of yourself, but I promise you the person that it shows up consistently, does the work, you're going to like that version of you more. But it's so scary. It's so scary because you're having to let go of control in a certain way of like, you might be embarrassing at the beginning. right? Like, I bet you have some stories when you first started. I always tell my people, I always tell them, like, when they're brand new to strength training, I like to tell them all my stupid stories of like getting stuck on a machine when I was 7 months pregnant and I couldn't get out and I was really scared. Like, you're going to look kind of silly at the beginning because you're new. And that's okay. Everybody looks silly when they're new. It's okay. Just keep going because you won't be new forever. And you'll probably be like intermediate faster than you think. I think people don't give themselves enough credit either of like, you can do hard things. I'm always telling that to my clients. I was like, this is hard. Good thing you're not weak, because they have to believe. Like, I always tell my clients, I'll believe in you. And then I'll give that belief back once you can hold it. You know what I mean? And so like, that's something that I would tell my, like, lose the timeline, let go of your old life because it's not going to serve you anyway. People get in their heads that, after 30 days, I can go back to my old pattern. Why? Why? How? You're in this mess trying to do the 30 days because you don't like that pattern.
Right.
And
don't like the result of it. Right?
Yeah. And so I'm like, you got to let go of that. And then you got to let go that there's an end date. The end date is death, my guy. So like, like you're going to have to do it forever if you want to keep the growth and keep growing.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, again, coming back to this just alternative personality, this new version of yourself, it's so helpful to frame it up with, understand that the things that you feel are hard now won't be, and understand that the feeling of doing something hard won't feel hard. Like that part of a person's character evolution is big. I've always had an adage that strength training helps your personality more than anything. Like, actually more than anything, in my opinion. Like, yes, you get better, metabolism because you have more lean mass, you get more structure and function in your body, you have healthier joints, like all of these other physical benefits are there. But this is the thing that you set out time to do and to literally resist something that your body doesn't want to do. And so that mental habit of do another one, show up for yourself. Show up and do some uncomfortable things and do another one and do another one. And then come back the next week and you do it again and hey, I can actually do more. And then what actually becomes so valuable and ideally addicting in that process is that value of that process of pushing through resistance. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Amazing book.
I looked for it and I can't find it.
Yeah, I know. It's a great book. You definitely you could audible that one. And so Stephen Pressfield, and there's also The Obstacles Away by Ryan Holiday. Very similar. Stephen Pressfield has more of an artist kind of, I want to say, kind of a poetic form of it. And he has a very good way of pinpointing the emotional expression of resistance. He labels it a thing, like it's an entity or an idea or a personality inside you. And Ryan Holiday has more of a philosophical, so he really studies the Stoics. So he has more of a kind of a logical way of breaking it down. Both great books. The War of Art, he frames it with a resistance, and it's so tangible because it's like, that voice that says to do the opposite, that's the path. It's like, I really don't feel like working out. It's like, remember, just like you said, Anna said, my thoughts are not me. I don't have to listen to not do that. That's just a thought. So if I were to go do the exercise, even though a thought came in saying I don't feel like doing it, it is the right path. The resistance is the path. And so strength training teaches you to go through that thought. Teaches you can do another rep. It teaches you that you can show up. And every time you do that other rep, it gets easier. And so to come back to like finding like, I'm with you on like bros and like the bro mantra out there, no pain, no gain.
Yeah.
And I think every message could be for someone. And some people need to hear no pain, no gain when they're just sitting on the couch all the fucking time. You got to sacrifice something.
Yes.
And
context and nuance.
And then there's some people who literally just grind it all the time, and then that leads to burn and crash out because they're willing to do all this cardio but not show up for their nutrition. Yeah. And there's just this nice in between of what we're trying to talk about here is just continual evolution. And I do love Jordan Zayat's other quote of, you're not going to fuck it up if you're willing to not quit. Just have that perception of, I'm willing to not quit, and then to really dress it up as, well, what's it going to look like 5 years from now? Like, if we're not willing to answer that question today, not that we have to be there today, it's just let's be very aware that the goal is to be capable of it 5 to 10 to 15 years from now. So It shouldn't be unsustainable. It should be gradual, and that should be the goal, and to recognize that all the things that feel really apparently hard now won't be. Yes. And even if it is hard, you're a stronger person, so you can handle it.
Yes.
And that's the frame that I think more people need to hear.
100%. And I always say, like, live in the middle. Like, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And so we don't want to go to one extreme or the other. The middle is usually the safe road, right? So, like, the bros of, like, grind, there are people that need to, like, for real, like, you need to get up off the couch. But then there are other people who I work with, who have a full-time job, have 4 children, have a husband, a house, and a dog, right? Like, and then family drama and stuff like that. And then they didn't quite hit their protein in the week. I was like, you need to chill because you're doing great, right? Like, so we live in the middle of, like, come on, the person that only has excuses, we need to have some tough love. But then it's context and nuance. That's how I usually am. It's like context and nuance. I agree with you. I wanted to go back to what you said about the strength training, because man, we coach very similarly. I think we're on the same wavelength, because I always tell people, I was like, when I'm working in person, I was like, look, you cannot, I always point to the outside of the gym. I was like, you cannot control what happens out there. You can control what happens in here, and you're going to build strength, and that's going to bleed to out there. Because I know that I always say that strength training saved my life, because it was like I was going through a very dark time in my life, and literally, like, I would go into the gym for 45 minutes and get strong. And it was like something I could control. And I just love how strength training can change your values and character. You don't think that doing a bicep curl will do that, but it does. And that's, like, so empowering. I was like, I wish everybody, I always say that strength training, the fountain of youth is not a fountain, it's a dumbbell. And if strength training was a supplement, it would be the most powerful supplement in the world, right? Like, but people don't want to do it because you have to look in the mirror and deal with yourself. You know, like, because you have to be consistent. I say the hardest thing you're ever going to do is look in the mirror and deal with yourself. Like, and most people, I've been doing this for 4 years, most people, that's the most terrifying thing to ask them to do. Because then you have to take accountability and responsibility for yourself, because you are your choices. And it's like, and I always tell people, I was like, all I ask is for you to be honest. And that's harder than a lot of people can give me, right? Because you're the problem, but you're also the solution.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's super helpful. I really like that adage of having to confront the mirror. That's where all the answers are. I mean, the mirror is going to be a reflection of your lifestyle. It just is. It's whatever you've been doing for the last 10, 20 years, 3 weeks, whatever it is. And if you're willing to confront that, it's like you say, it's the hardest thing, but it can be the most helpful thing. It reminded me of a saying I always had. I don't love it when people say I am my own worst enemy, and this is just like a probability basis thing that I always have. There's so many evil people on the internet that could be your worst enemy. Like there's some real evil, but I do believe you're your most dangerous. And because you are the closest to your ears, and you are your most frequent critic. And therefore, you're the most dangerous critic. But then, as you had mentioned, you're also, like, I love how you framed it, you're the solution to your criticism. Yeah. You're the only one that can actually solve this. Yeah. So giving you both the ability of recognizing that you're the problem and the solution in the same sense, right? Because it's like, if you're going to be your own critic, I always had an adage which makes people fucking massively uncomfortable. And I've used it on myself, and very few people have ever actually taken me up on it. Like, very few people can handle this, but I have a very simple mental thing that I ask them to do. I get them to close their eyes, and I ask them, I want you to visualize the inner part of you that is your critic. Like it is you, like it's inside you. And you talk to that right now, and you have a conversation with it saying, hey, inner critic, I love you. I understand we have our differences. And I know you're going to be there to criticize me, but I actually do need you. And I want to do this together, and I want to be friends. And just like a good friend, they're going to call you out on shit. You're going to get pissed off at them at times, but they're also going to be there to support you. And I mean, that's how you should be talking to yourself. The way that you have conversation with yourself would be no different than a loved one, your best friend, your partner, your parents, because you would want to be there to support them to be their strongest. Call them out when they're not in line with their values, but be there to be empathetic and supportive when they need it. But so many people have a self-critic that is just completely pulls them apart, right? That just completely devalues them. Oh, you're a piece of shit. I used to always call myself, like me and my friend, actually another chubby buddy of mine, we would always say, yeah, I was a fat piece of shit this weekend. I did this. And it's like, I stopped saying that. I stopped using that word because it's like, it felt that kind of bias. Like, in a weird way, it felt good to self-deprecate. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, I'm just laughing about it. But another really good adage, I had another guest on here who's a therapist, and he had said, your subconscious level of thinking does not understand sarcasm. Right. Sarcasm doesn't work on like a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, or I'd say a 5-year-old is more appropriate. Yeah. So if you go to try to do sarcasm on a 5-year-old, they're going to be really taking that to heart, and guess what? Your subconscious thinking is too. So instead of being self-deprecating, what can you do to be constructive with it, which is so uncomfortable? And I find it really interesting that people have a harder time letting go of the idea of not being critical with themselves in a negative way. Like, there is so much like real self, and as I mentioned, I'm going through the process of schooling in therapy right now, so there's a lot of deep work that I don't have all the capacity to help people with. But I think that's a real key sign, is if someone is incapable of talking to themselves like a friend, it's going to be a big part of the problem to unpack. And as you 100%. Mentioned, like, you're in therapy yourself, like, I think this is where people, if you have a hard time with that, to explore. Peter Aitia, you're familiar with his stuff probably, right? He's the Dr. Peter Aitia. Yeah, so he's big in the fitness and nutrition space too as a doctor, and he had this thing about saying how he was such a self-deprecating guy. He was always, perfectionist and stuff, and he started saying, like, I had to start talking to myself in this way. And what he would do was, I think it was golf or something like this, and if he had a bad golf swing, he would open up his phone app of voice memos, and he would talk to himself as if he's talking to a loved one. He's like, I know you're mad at that swing. I know that really disappointed you, but we know we can focus on this, this, and this. And he said it was the single biggest mindset impact of his entire life. And so I think that's a really big thing for people.
Well, 100%. And then also with the critic voice, I was like, where did that start? I would want to know, where did it start? Because most of the things, if you look back, like, for example, I mentioned my anxiety. My anxiety was right about a lot of stuff. She was there to protect me. She wasn't wrong, right? And now I did something similar in therapy where I had to identify her as a character and then talk to her and then be like, I know you're just trying to protect me, but I can protect myself. Right. And like have that separation. And so with the critic, I'd be like, when did the voice get really bad? And like with you, what you were saying, calling yourself name, I was like, that's deflection. And it sounds like deflection from pain, of like almost embarrassment that you ate like a piece of shit, like you said.
Totally.
And it's like, it's deflection. It's like, we have to look at why are you so vicious with yourself? When did that start? And is it really even you? Maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's like your parent, maybe it's, because I have that a lot. Like, I'm always telling mothers, please don't be your kid's first bully, right? Like, because that I'm seeing 30, 40, 50-year-old people who will tell me what their mom said when they were 15. And I was like, that's not their voice, that's their mom's voice. Right. And we need to lose mom's voice because mom didn't know anything. Mom had her own set of problems. Right. And so addressing, like identifying, why am I so mean to myself? When did that start? Having that deep work can really help, going like, oh, I can let it go now because it wasn't me at the first place, of like being your own friend. I was just talking, I did a video today about like looking at your future self like a friend. And like taking care of them, And so it's like, if we look at ourselves as a friend going like, you're going to be really like I told this story that happened today where it was like future me, I out loud, I was like, man, past Anna is super dope for doing that. Right. Like, so I have a memory, and I always talk about like the 28-year-old who got her shit together with getting healthy. I always say I want to go back and kiss her on the forehead. Right. Like, cause she showed up and did the work when it was the hardest, cause it's always hard at the beginning. Right. And I was like, look at yourself like a friend, going like, how can I help future Anna out like a friend? You would be kind to your friend and try to help them out. Why can't you look at yourself the same?
Right.
You know, like, I'm going to do the hard work of working out right now. So at nighttime, I can be really proud. That future me is going to be like, she's awesome. You know? So I really like looking at myself like a friend.
And in having the future version of you in mind. I think that's like,
yes.
It's its own skill.
Mm-hmm.
It's the classic marshmallow test, the delayed gratification, but like this kind of practice of communicating with future self. I've actually had a client do that before. He wasn't sure if he wanted to compete at a boxing event, and I wasn't trying to push him one way or the other. It was like completely his choice, and I'm like, okay, I'm not here to be one way or the other. I want you to choose it, because it's the only way it works. I want you to have a conversation with future you, a version of you that doesn't do it and a version that does, and then I want you to tell me what you would derive. And you derive like, I'm going to do it. Like, I just, there actually isn't a downside in me not doing it, and not trying. And then he did it, and he won, and he was one of the most proudest moments of his life to win a fight.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was like, it was completely up to him. And so, like, to have that kind of practice, I recommend people do that for fitness, as you mentioned. Talk about future goals, and as you mentioned, like, you're creating this way to stop repeating the past. And I love that you played this out, because people do need to appreciate, to have that grace for themselves. Your emotional eating, your all these issues that you might have, maybe the reason why you do hesitate to commit to training, whatever it is, whatever bad habits you have, they're actually just adaptations from your past. The emotional eating did come as a coping mechanism. And so whatever that coping mechanism was, it's like it was serving you at that time, so you can forgive yourself for having that idea at that time. But as you mentioned, that version of you no longer serves you. And so people need to, like, if you can honestly, like, challenge a person, be like, someone who's a binge eater, for example, or something like that, and you just say, hey, if I told you you had to give it up for 1 year, but you could go the year after, 1 year, do you think you could do it? And you actually will recognize how squirmy a person will get. Because it's like, hey, if I didn't binge eat for a year, would that really make me uncomfortable? And if it was me 2 years ago, it did. But or 3 years ago for sure. But and then the first time I challenged myself to even think about this, I was like, why is this not appealing to me? And then I recognized that feeling of the emotional charge inside me that wanted to use that compensation model, or the I wanted to protect myself and binge when I needed to, came over me. And that's what that is. That's the old version of you. And so start talking to the new version of you, and be willing to trust that this new version of you is going to say, hey, you actually don't have to feel that anymore. But there's work that you have to do right now to move past that momentary feeling. As you mentioned, emotions, they can probably wither away in 90 seconds, 10 minutes. If it's a craving, it goes away in 10 minutes. So restructuring that framework for yourself, and it's really promising for people to know. It's like, hey, you get a craving, you want to eat the Oreos because you're home and it's stressed, but if you're willing to just sit with that emotion, let's say it's 10 minutes for the first time, and then you eat the Oreo, but you're willing to pause for 10 minutes, you're at least willing to give that pause, and if it didn't go away, you have a couple Oreos. But if it does, maybe you recognize that it wasn't as big of a need as it first happened. And I actually just believe that there's something about emotions that our body needs to feel, but we're afraid of feeling. And for some reason, when you're just willing to feel the stressful state, it dissipates on its own, because you don't repress it. It's almost like the body going through its normal healing stage is just experiencing it and not clouding it with just, I'm going to smash food in my face so I don't feel it. But if you're willing to feel the stress of the anger, the sadness, the stress, and just, okay, let that, I always call it digestion, let that digest in your body instead of covering up with food, and see how you feel after. And you start to realize that you can handle way more.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, I always say we need a lot of tools in our coping toolbox, right? Like, don't use food as your, like, food is not a hammer and everything's a nail, right? Like, we have to have more because we do get dysregulated, right? Like, I struggle with dysregulation. I have 3 children and 2 dogs, and like, it gets loud, right? And so, like, learning how to cope is a skill, and most people do not have the skills. That's why it's good to hire like a coach and to hire a therapist sometimes to, like, because normalizing feelings, most people don't want to normalize it because somehow feelings are bad. There are no bad feelings. It's just data. It's just data. And so, like, I talk about data all the time. Like we're just like the scale, the weight on the scale is just data. We don't have to bring emotion into it. It's just telling us a number, right? Like, removing the emotion and then learning that the emotion isn't bad because you've been programmed to believe that the number should say something, right? And like, just having grace for yourself in those feelings. Most people just think that they're wrong for feeling anything, right? And so, like, normalizing feelings is the first step, and then neutralizing them is like, I'm angry. Well, what are you angry at? And then you realize that that's an appropriate response to what's happening. Yeah, of course. So then let it pass. Like, anger is an appropriate response. Way to be. And then, like, there's nothing wrong with the feeling of anger. It's the action behind the anger. What did you do? Did you just break someone's nose? Then that's a problem, right? The anger of being mad for someone saying a bad thing about you, totally appropriate, right? Like, and most people just don't know how to cope and how to take the emotional overwhelm and to bring it down. And so, like, that's what I think as coaches, part of our responsibility is to give them coping skills to, like, bring the emotion down. So that logic, what would my future self say in this moment? What would I like to see at the end of when I'm putting my head on a pillow? Will I be proud of myself, or will I be frustrated that I can't seem to get it? We've got to bring the emotion down so that we can actually coach them through it so that logic happens.
I love it. I think that is a great way to really hit it off. We're going to have to chat about this stuff again because you can tell that we didn't get to half the stuff I wanted to talk about because this was so good. We just went off of this. It was great banter and we're both very passionate about it because this is such a relevant problem. I would love to know, let's just do 2 more because I would love to know if there's one more thing that's on the top of your mind you wish more people knew when it came to whether it's emotional eating or mindset around this improvement that people are trying to do.
Your effort is good enough. You just have to try. And you have to be consistent. That's one thing that most of my clients who have struggled for a really long time, they get with me, we figure it out, and then they're like, oh my God, my effort's good enough. And I was like, yeah, you don't have to, we're working for 80%. We're not working for 100. And as soon as what does Jordan say? He says, C's get degrees. You'll get where you want to go. It might take longer, but you're able to maintain it. So isn't that A+++ at the end? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, once you reach and you're able to maintain it, and it was like, your effort is good enough. You just have to be consistent in that effort. And you don't give up. You can't fail if you don't quit.
I love that. It's all about continuously. It's the most boring thing. Consistency is key. It's the most fucking boring thing. Yeah. And the analogy I always like to use is you're not trying to it's a car analogy again, but like you don't try to spin the wheel 180 degrees when you're going on a fucking highway. Your life has so much momentum on a highway that if you try to spin it, you will fucking spin out and flip. But if you were to hold the steering wheel by 10 degrees to the left, you do a 180. But you almost don't notice it, but kind of notice it. And what's really interesting is, like, even I remember seeing some research where it's like, if people have a relative expression of 10 to 20% difficulty, more than their norm, it's the most sustainable. And so it's not how big of a difference. It's just noticeable to know it's there, but sustainable enough and to know that you're seeing a difference, but it's sustainable. And so, like, I love that you frame it. It's like, hey, if you're trying, it's good enough. Just be honest that you're trying and keep showing up. I think that's a great adage.
I think that's another thing I would add is you have to be honest. And that's going to hang up 90% of people. Because I mean, they've done studies of like tracking. It's like, as soon as you tell me I don't eat much and I'm not losing weight, you're lying. Like, you're lying, right? Because I was like, I've had people that have had hormone issues and still do it, right? Like, you want to throw the hormones. This is a whole other topic, right? But I'm like, you have to be honest with yourself. And until you are radically honest with yourself, change is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I'm like, that's just like, it's impossible if you're not honest. We have to start with honesty.
That goes to the other adage I have is you don't lie to another human more than yourself. Again, 100%. It's a proximity thing. You're too capable of lying to yourself more than anything else. So the more you can be honest with yourself, it's a dangerous thing, right? Because it's super easy, right? Well, I love this. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I always say to my people, no one lies to you more than you do. So,
yeah, because it's just
same page.
Yeah, it's too easy. It was when I was lying to myself about something. I was like, oh man, I'm really good at this. So, so let's leave off with Strong Ambition Podcast. Again, we're going to have you back on because this is a lot of fun. Because I want to dive into more. So in the future, I'll definitely reach out for another one. But I want to know, it could be work, it could be life, it could be all of it. What is your most recent ambition? What are you really excited about?
Excited to be in person again. Like with real people, and I get to see multiple, like, and just, I forgot how much I missed training in person. And I'm just pumped for my clients too, when they do a really good job. Like, I have been working at my new job for about 4 weeks with clients, and they're already starting to like feel better. I have one that has a back issue, and she's like, my back already feels amazing. She had back surgery. And so I'm like, that's what I'm like, ambitious in the fact that I'm ready to help a lot of people feel their best selves, be their best selves, and be the best versions of them. That is what like lights me on fire, where I'm just like so thrilled, where I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, is when someone is like, you actually changed my life. And I'm like, shut up, that's great. That's I get most thrilled.
That's why we're in this industry, right?
Yes, 100%. Like, where I can make them feel where they didn't believe in themselves and then they did. It's like, I always tell you, my goal is to leave you better than I found you. And we can't help everyone, unfortunately. I wish I could, but like when someone just clicks and their life is radically changed, and it's like you get to participate in it and walk alongside while they do it, like nothing pumps me up. Like, and I just want to help more.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. That's why I got into it. So that's beautiful.
Same.
Thank you so much, Anna. Where can people find more about your stuff?
You can find me on basically every social. I am Common Sense Health, and my logo's a triangle, but my face is on there too. So there's my face. So
awesome. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes for everyone.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. This has been fun.
A lot of fun. Thanks again.
All right.
Anna.
Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Anna. I really had fun there. I had a whole list of so many other things I want to dive into. She talked about debunking myths. She talked about being a mother. I want to dive into all that, but we just flowed too much. It was one of the most fun conversations I've had, because we just bounced the same vibes back and forth. So as she mentioned, we have very similar coaching styles, similar values, and see the same problems that people continue to have in this industry when it comes to relationship with food, or instincts and habits around food. And even that language around relationship with food, I've heard recently ideas on social media about challenging the term relationship, because then you're almost giving too much power to the food. And I think it's semantics. I think you can call it a relationship with food if you want, but as she had mentioned, talking about more objective data, and just using more objective terms sometimes can be helpful. And maybe you're framing it, my habits around food. It's the way I habitually behave around food. And maybe that's more power, right? Maybe that's just, it doesn't always have to be emotionally heavy. And again, that's not to say that we can't have emotional eating. As we mentioned, there's great reasons to have emotional eating. It's actually one of my favorite habits, is to share treats with Angelina. It's such an instinct that when I go to help my parents in the fall for harvest, my mom will routinely have a dessert every night. Every night. It's a routine, classic dessert ritual. And it's always an amazing dessert. My mom's an excellent cook and baker. So it'll be like this, delicious banana cake or carrot cake with, cream cheese icing. And last year, I was always bringing it home. So this year, my mom's like, do you want me to pack you some up for you and Angelina? Yes, please, Mom. And I'm bringing it home so we can share it. Because I get more excitement out of that. I get more pleasure by sharing that food with someone rather than just eating myself. And there's just so many other great adages we had. I'm just going to try to go over these quick because I think the episode was solid. I thought we just had a lot of good points. I just want to highlight them. So the new identity is probably the biggest thing that we really framed up, is how you can form a new identity, and some really important strategies around there. Like, start to be okay with breaking free from old emotional states. Start to be okay with letting go of old coping mechanisms. First skill that we mentioned is the pause. The habit's coming. Even if you're in the midst of eating the food, I still remember to this very day when I started to recognize that I was at my parents' emotionally eating in their pantry, and I just started to, even though I was doing it, I was in the midst of the storm, and I was at least saying, why am I doing this? And I never asked myself before in the midst of a binge. I never asked myself. I would just eat. It's like, why am I doing this? What am I getting from this? And so it's like, okay, it tastes good. I haven't really let myself go in food for a while. So it just feels releasing. And so I'm at least paying attention and learning this information. And then the more you do that, the more information you find. You may or may not have heard me use this analogy, but it was a description I have from the old movie Twister, where this is where they're chasing tornadoes. And the whole idea of the movie was to get this machine in a big tornado that had all these things that would fly up in the tornado, and they would just learn so much data about the behavior of the tornado, because if you're in the tornado, you'd understand it better. And that's how I felt about it. In the final scene of Twister, they're literally in the middle of a F5, like the biggest tornado, and they're like planted on a pipe, which, by the way, now that I realize that, this is supposed to be the biggest form of tornado, and they're in the middle of it. And they just kind of strap themselves to some pipes. I don't think that would have worked, but anyways, only just now realized that. The point is, start with a pause. Start to ask yourself the question, why am I doing? What am I getting from this? Could I actually take a breath and just step away? And I want you to just imagine it, and then I want you to try to practice it if you have an issue with this. Let's use the Oreo scenario. You have a craving, you're tired, sick, whatever it is, you go to that food, and then you eat it. You're starting to eat it, and then you just pause. You want to have another Oreo. You've already had like 3 or 4, and you're feeling like you already popped your tire, and you want to drive down this road. You putting down the Oreos and walking away, what would that feel like? Well, you probably literally feel it in your body viscerally. Like, you just feel it's like, oh, fuck, I want to keep eating it. And it would feel hard. Well, we talked about this. That's the voice of resistance, the feeling of resistance in you. But what's interesting is once you do that one time, it's like the first time you go to do dumbbell or barbell walking lunges. It hurts. And then the next time you do it, it's not as hard. And the next time you do it, you actually start noticing it sooner on the Oreos, and you can put it down sooner. You just need to start pausing and shifting. And I talked about it in the last episode, in a recent episode about Del Spragon. But shifting that perspective is possible, because it's another frame here, or another great phrase here. You are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are just simply thoughts that come in. They probably came from habits in the past, and what Adele calls just patterns. They're just your old patterns, and you can shift new patterns. And so, in recognizing that they were coping mechanisms, again, and Adele talked about this, and Anna talked about this, like the reason why I probably had this issue around eating was trying to find some sort of emotional coping when I was younger. Don't know why, don't know what. It just was something really exciting to me. And so now I need to recognize that temporary coping mechanism is not serving me. And so you start to replace that with, well, what can I do instead? Put it down. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you just watch TV. Maybe you just be okay with not feeling an extremely heightened sense of this pleasure of food for a little bit. But until we recognize that problem, that it is coping, and let's just be honest, if we had a friend that was coping with drugs, we would want them to actually intervene in that moment. We'd say, hey, you're coping with alcohol right now, with your emotions. Now, the thing with alcohol is you could avoid bars. There are far more visible issues in the immediate when someone's an alcoholic. Problem with food is you're going to be around it all the time. So you have to actually meet this more head on, and it's going to keep coming up until you just challenge it. And if anything, I would always say, if this is your battle, is it that bad? Because I've seen people with alcoholism and drug issues, and it is a very, very messy sight. And so I knew I had this issue, and I was in some way grateful, because it could be worse. So recognizing that coping mechanism, and then just being okay with, can I manage this emotion right now? And remember, and I mentioned, I love how she said being objective, and I didn't highlight it, but I wish I would have. I want to highlight now that even emotions could be objective. Now, it's not to say that we have to be robots and everything's objective data, but let's say in a state, you just say, I feel this craving on a scale of 1 to 10, a 9 right now. You've just made an emotional state objective data. And so the next time you come back to that Oreo situation, and because you put it down last time, you know what it felt like. You're like, well, now I'm at a 9, maybe an 8.5. And so you start creating this data idea. And I'm not going to lie, Food Journal will be fucking super excellent for you on this. One of the things I remember hearing that was very, very eye-opening, Alan Aragon, I may or may not have talked about him on here before, but he's probably one of the most renowned researchers in nutritional research. But he also does an amazing job of condensing all this objective data, very high-level data, but then making it so tangible for the everyday person to utilize. And that's what his book really does super well. And someone had asked him about, the issues of binge eating and emotional eating and stuff. And he got people to keep journals, and then to make sure that they leave like what they did, what they ate, and then tell their emotional state, how they felt about themselves, and how often it was negative thoughts was a really, really powerful thing. So this kind of goes into the self-criticism aspect, is how often we're actually really fighting that internal battle with ourselves so much. And if it gets to this realm, like, I probably should have put an asterisk on this episode. Like, if any of these things are really heightened, you're at the far end of, like, real binge eating disorder, like, get therapy. Like, it's probably your best bet, rather than just listen to a guy on a podcast. Now, if I believe everything's on a spectrum, like, I had probably had close to the spectrum of binge eating disorder, qualified by the DSM, but got away from it soon enough that I didn't need to have that intervention. Probably wish I would have sooner. It probably would have been a great time to go to a therapist. And if someone is at that end, I would recommend you do it. But the self-criticism thing could be such a constructive way for you to start trusting yourself more. And you might need less coping because you're not as hard on yourself. But with that being said, once you make friends with that self-critic, it's important that you still allow it to do its job. And that's why I say, like, you don't not want to have a self-critic. That's why I don't like saying that I'm my worst self-critic, because you're already framing up that relationship with your internal critic as being nothing but negative. And so you don't give your self-critic an opportunity to be your best coach, because you have to. Another thing that Anna highlighted, you are the problem and the solution. So how can you be your own solution? How can you communicate with yourself to actually help yourself through this problem? I think I want to leave it there, because we had so many really good adages. I try to highlight the ones that were my favorites. I hope those all resonate with you. I hope they help you, because I thought it was really good. All this advice I wish I had even 3 years from now, 5 years ago for sure. But I hope it helps you in some way to start to improve your habits around food, to improve your mindset around self-care and just who you're trying to be. Keep in mind that future you. And I'll give you a little challenge. I give this challenge to my clients all the time. And I'd say, of those who do it, they mostly stick to it after. And it's a journal challenge. If you're having issues around whatever it is, self-control or showing up to the gym, whatever the challenge is. And we can tell it's just a mindset thing, that we need to overcome this mindset thing. The journal challenge, and actually I spoke about how I helped my one client with the future challenge, and do that. And it doesn't even have to be the future challenge, but I think it's super useful. And some people don't know how to journal, and so it could be handwritten. I personally type my journal. Like, I'm a typer. I have terrible handwriting and I'm slow. And so I type. Some people will do voice memos. And the voice actually be very powerful because you have to put that voice and that words out there like you're actually talking to yourself. But try to have future you tell you what the future looks like. What are the habits? What does a day sound like or look like? How do you feel living that life? Are you exercising 3 days a week, 2 days a week? Remember, this is your ideal future you. This is the one that you want to set out to be. How do they enjoy their meals? Are they going out occasionally? Do they never go out? Because I don't think that's what you're looking for. But maybe you have a right pace. And then they even describe to you how the emotional coping has evolved and being like, I just don't feel it anymore. But then you can have that discussion with future you, and they could tell you, well, this is actually where it started. And what's interesting is you can just get outside of the box that you're sitting in, and you can start looking at it from the outside or in the future lens. And when future you can only start today if you want to edge towards there. It has to be that little bit of effort, as I mentioned, that little 10% method. We can be a little bit better in so many realms. And just see what it's like. And to help this challenge, make it simple, just so you can commit to it, is try the challenge for a minimum writing of 5 to 10 minutes. Minimum 5, ideally 10. Should be enough to just describe a day. And I'm willing to bet, I'm more than willing to bet, you'll write for a half hour to an hour. Because once you start doing it, you realize how much more you have to say to yourself in tangible words. There's so much more underneath the surface. And it is the only insight that you'll get to your subconscious level of thinking is if you ask it. If you've listened to the podcast long enough, I always say it's like bringing a flashlight down in the depth of a lake. It sounds scary, but there's an incredible ecosystem there, and you are that ecosystem. So be willing to discover who you are, and amazing things can happen. So one final thought, I actually just had to ironically come back on here. I had just recorded that whole outro, and then I went to go make myself food, and I was reflecting on this podcast. And so what was really funny was I do remember a really important reflection was not just how me and Anna both said, we're still working on ourselves, we're still improving. The discussion I had on here about how to not head down the same road, I felt really hypocritical because this very day, I have been having a very hard time mentally just showing up to track my food, calorie maintenance. That's what my goal is. But I feel way less accountable during the calorie maintenance process. And it's always been my issue with yo-yo dieting because I would just be like, yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea. And there's sometimes I can be, but I get really snacky now. It's less of a binge eating issue and more of a snacking issue. And I just took my own advice. I paused and I said, well, just because I don't know exactly how the day has been perfect or not, because I felt like I was snacking on this, snacking on that, and it might have been hard to track, doesn't mean I can't try to turn the car around. So I took my own advice, opened up the app, I tracked my calories for where I thought I might be at today, and this goes back to one of Megan's sentiments from a couple episodes ago. It's not as bad as I thought, and I'm perfectly fine. Not to mention, I was just willing to turn the car and go in the direction I know I should. So hopefully that's a little bit of advice in terms of, even coaches are still improving. And it's a matter of being willing to turn that car at any given day, no matter how bad it is. I just took that whole lens that I just talked about to not be a complete hypocrite and not be willing to try. If I just ended the day right, I know I'd be proud. And it turns out it's just not even that bad. I'm doing just fine, but I had to be willing to turn that car to find out where it was. So I just wanted to give you that little story to highlight that even this very day, I'm working on these habits myself. Well, I hope this episode helped you. And if it helped you, or if you know someone who can help, I'm always going to say, please share it, because that's how we can help more people. and we can help this little podcast grow. Don't hesitate to check out Anna's stuff. As I mentioned, I'll leave it in the show notes, and we're going to have her on again because it was a really fun conversation. And subscribe, leave a review. You can do that. That would be amazing. That would mean the world to me because I don't get too many of those. But more importantly, I'm still just going to thank you for sitting along with the ride. Hopefully this podcast is still helping you because that's all I'm trying to do. Help you chase your own ambitions. Because life is not about the pursuit of happiness, but rather the happiness within your pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.